All right. It didn't say we're not recording, so I think
You are
we are.
recording.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's get started. This is April 18th, 2019, and this is the regular club meeting of the Rotary Club of Wash. And we want to welcome our speaker tonight, who's Erica Gwynn. Now, many people know her, many people don't, but I'm going to embarrass Erica, as we always do, and read her intro, and so that this will be on the recording for everybody who might not know her. Erica is the Area Focus Manager for Water and Sanitation at the Rotary Foundation and Manager for the Rotary International/USAID Alliance. She provides administrative and technical support to Rotary, the Rotary-led WASH initiatives at a variety of scales, leads strategic planning for future WASH programs, and builds partnerships to support capacity building initiatives. Erica has a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a Master's in Aquatic Toxicology, Environmental Health from the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. With 10 years of professional research experience, she has focused her career on water and its connection to public health and the environment. As a Rotary International Ambassadorial Scholar, she investigated the ecological and socioeconomic links between heavy metals in Lake Chapala, Mexico, and the dietary habits of local populations. In addition, Erica has worked for USDA, Michigan Department of Natural Resources, Aragon Laboratories, and has served as a consultant to a variety of environmental and public health projects in South America and East Africa. If that's all correct, any corrections, Erica? If not, then welcome, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. This is my first introduction really to, well, the E-Club, other than a separate conversation that I had with Bruce and Bob, etc. So thank you so much for having me. As I understand, there's also a Tuesday gathering, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make that one. So today is really a day that I really wish to interact with all of you rather than spew out Rotary statistics and what we're doing at Rotary. So I'll be doing a little bit of that, but the purpose for my time here today is really to be able to interact with all of you. It's very rare that I get to interact with, in one group, a bunch of Rotarians who also happen to be water and sanitation professionals or have substantial experience in water and sanitation, and it's such a privilege for me, so thank you. So what I want to do is, first of all, how many of you knew that there was even a water and sanitation manager at the foundation? Okay.
No hands? Or,
all of you. Okay. Yeah. That's great. So for all the areas of focus, we have a manager. And the point of this was by the Rotary Foundation is to bring somebody in externally to the foundation to try to elevate the portfolios that we designated as our areas of focus. So I've been with Rotary now for 5.5 years. And originally when I came to the foundation, I thought I would only be there for 2 years, and now it's doubled that. And it's because it's actually been quite fulfilling. I have a variety of skill sets that I've been working on and engaging with different Rotarians from around the world and their programs. So I wanted to show you a little bit of what we're doing across Rotary globally. Many of you are involved in part of these statistics, so it may already be familiar with you, but I think that's a good place to start, is where are we with water and sanitation? And when we compare it to the other portfolios, am I able to share my my computer screen? Is that
yes, possible? You are. So if you look at the bottom across, there's a little icon with an upward arrow that says share. You kind of have to move your mouse down to the bottom to see the menu.
Mm-hmm. I see mute, stop video.
Be in the middle.
And in the middle, it'll say invite participants.
Share. Okay, okay.
So you click on share.
Mm-hmm. And then screen.
You want to share your screen, and then I think you have to hit share one more time.
Okay, let's do this. So hopefully we can go back and forth.
Yep, we're there.
Great. All right. So what I want to do is start you off with just our general trends that we're seeing in Rotary as we speak. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So as you can see, in general, we have a general trend, upward trend in water and sanitation. Compared to our other areas of focus, we're the second most popular area of focus, next to disease prevention and treatment. And that's not anything surprising given that our corporate initiative is in polio. But what I can say is that the statistics that you're seeing here is really looking at just the tip of the iceberg of what Rotary is doing. Because what the foundation sees and can account for is only global grants. So anytime Rotarians are asking for funding from the foundation, that's when we have a pulse of even what they're doing, and reporting comes into us that way. But there's a slew of activities out there, as you know, that are happening without foundation funding, that are engaging the private sector as well, governments that are just as big as some of the projects that I'm going to highlight today. So overall, we're seeing this upward trend in water and sanitation. You can see that the majority of our activity is actually in sub-Saharan Africa, the Americas, which is actually Central America, which includes Guatemala, Honduras, and what's our other big one that we're working in? Well, part of Belize. So there's a lot of wash and schools activities that are accounting for this 26.7 million from the quote unquote Americas. But I think what's really interesting is that we had to parse out India, as even though that's a country, it really is is a big bulk of our Rotary funding is going to India activities. And ironically, a lot of the foundation giving is actually from India. So we're seeing this interesting shift going on with India. So we'll dive into that in a little bit. So when we talk about what is it that we're really doing or focusing in water and sanitation activities, it's really focused still on water supply. Water is still very sexy within the Rotary as opposed to sanitation, although we are starting to see a turn in a turn of interest around sanitation. You can see that's followed closely by wash and schools, because Rotarians in general gravitate to institutions first when we're dealing with water and sanitations as the starting point in a community. That also is reflective of a lot of basic education and literacy projects that are already that Rotarians tend to gravitate to as well, such as teacher training and book drives. And then upon further discovery and discussions with the stakeholders at the school, they realize, oh, water and sanitation is a very big need here. We need to expand our activities. So we put a latrine construction and repair. Normally you would see sanitation there, but in reality, Rotarians within our global grant structure, they tend to focus a lot of their activities in the construction of latrines. And this definitely has had an upward tick when we have countries and initiatives that are focusing specifically on sanitation, such as India. In Mexico, there's a wash and schools effort, as Marcos can speak to. We also have a big movement in the Philippines around wash and schools, so we see specifically sanitation starting to really gain interest. Now, the thing that I really want to really emphasize is that within our global grant portfolio, we also fund scholarships, and I'm a big advocate for this because, as Bob introduced, I'm a former ambassadorial scholar, and that was really nice because that opened up a lot of doors for me to be able to enter the international sector without having to divvy up money of my own, and that just led to one thing after another. So I'm so grateful for Rotary for that opportunity. And surprisingly enough, we really don't fund a lot of scholar activities through water and sanitation. Out of all the areas of focus, this is the least amount of scholars that come to the foundation, the least amount of applications. Only 2.3 million, and that, again, that's over the last 4 to 5 years. And knowing that one of the greatest gaps in water and sanitation is around technical capacity, in-country technical capacity, I was stunned really to see this. And I'm not sure why we're not getting the word out there about scholarships through the foundation specifically for water and sanitation. I'd also like to point out that our water and sanitation portfolio has broadened a bit to include water resource management. So that also opens up to another level of activity and scholarship opportunities. Okay, so any questions just about these general? I had to throw in just a spackling of statistics just to give everyone an idea of where the foundation is right now. We're going to have our newest statistics come out every year at the 1st of July. And if you want, I can start making it a habit just to distribute those. I normally distribute those to WASRAG right away. But if this club would like, to get those statistics right away, I can definitely put that into our agenda.
I have a question, Erica. This is Neil.
Yeah.
How many people do that scholarship cover, the scholarships number?
That's a good question. Let's see. I would have to look that up.
No problem. You can send it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and one thing to do, like most of these scholarships tend to be, the one thing I did look up was that a lot of the scholarships actually are going to North American, European students. And again, I was really surprised about that. We used to have a program called Partnership with IHE. UNESCO IHE, and unfortunately that partnership dissolved, but that was really our only opportunity to try to recruit students from developing countries, specifically targeted in areas of greatest need.
Do you know what happened that caused it to dissolve?
Priorities at the foundation. We have friendly competition, as I'm told to say, between the areas of focus. And water and sanitation had a little bit of favor in the fact that we had this unique partnership scholarship program. The other areas of focus did not, and there was not the capacity for a scholarship program to be in each of the areas.
Right.
Erica, how do you actually advertise those scholarships?
It's just through our global grants. So if people are aware that global grants are out there and they know what global grants can cover, that's how they're essentially advertised. So if a DRFC doesn't know that a global grant can also cover a scholarship, that's where a lot of the breakdown comes from. But there needs to be a greater visibility. We have actually a water and sanitation site on Rotary.org. I know how everybody loves Rotary.org, but if you go to the water and sanitation page, I told our communications team the need to highlight some of our scholars, because we have some amazing scholars. Isis, Mejias, we just have people from all over the world that have really come out and are actually Rotarians now, and taking a lead role.
Yeah.
I have to admit my ignorance a little bit too. So where do they study and for how long?
It's usually, a lot of our scholars are masters. They typically are in engineering. They go to institutions mainly in the United States or in the EU. So yeah, we get a lot of former military. What else do we get? It's mainly, students coming right out from undergrad. A lot of them are fresh. It's usually a 2-year program. A few of them will utilize it for part of their PhD studies. Yeah.
But the advantage to the student is not the location or a focused WASH area, or is it? or is it just the funding? What's the advantage to a student becoming an ambassadorial scholar?
Well,
Besides-
for a global grant scholar, the advantage is that it's scholarship money for it to pay for their education if they
Right.
don't have that money. Yeah.
That's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, they can go wherever they want, as long as the club sponsors them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it seems like the issue would be linking interested people that are of that particular group that don't know about it with the clubs that would sponsor them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. I actually have quite a few students or potential students looking, and they'll contact me directly and say, how do I apply for this scholarship? And I tell them they have to, reach out to the local Rotary Club. And that always seems to be the biggest barrier, is that they're not familiar with Rotary locally. They don't realize that that's the way they have to go. They can't go directly through headquarters.
What are the requirements to sponsor?
You have to be eligible. Your club has to be eligible to be able to do a global grant. So it's a basic training and qualification of your district, which most districts by this point in time are. And then you also have to have a minimum of $30,000 to do a global grant is the total budget. So that would be $15,000 contribution by the district and club, if it was predominantly DDF. So
Does the fact that it's scholarships count? That you still can't have two global grants of any type at once, or if we have one global grant, we could do a scholarship separately?
yeah, no, you can do up to 10 global grants. So a scholarship is considered a global grant.
That are active.
That are active. Mhm. Yeah. So I'm gonna keep going in the interest of time, just real quick, is just to tell you a couple of new things that are happening at the foundation that would be of interest to this club. So every 9 years, so our areas of focus were established 9 years ago. So there's policy that says that every 9 years, all the areas of focus are up for grabs, basically. They're reviewed diligently to see the amount of interest Rotarians have in the area, what level of activity, the sustainability of projects, etc. So we just conducted a fairly big study across the 6 areas of focus that looked at a representative number from each of the continents of projects for each of the areas of focus, and looked at several sustainability measures. And water and sanitation did fairly good for those projects. I was quite surprised. And there were some areas that pointed out areas that we know that Rotarians struggle with, such as, for example, software activities, education initiatives, behavior change, etc. But overall, our sustainability scores for water and sanitation were higher than, I would say, like basic education and literacy projects. And a lot of that, the consultants actually dove into the reasons for that. And one of the things that they noted was that there's a substantial use of expertise within Rotary. I mean, it really is a space where Rotarians with expertise can actually use their vocational expertise for projects and service. For some reason, they didn't see that so much in some of the other areas, surprisingly enough, such as economic and community development or basic education literacy, which I was surprised with. So the results are going to be made public for that study as of the end of June. And again, I can compile this all to you and just send it to you directly, because sometimes I think our website gets these things lost. But it's interesting to look at. It's a high-level analysis, but it gave me a lot of confidence in where Rotary is going with water and sanitation. So the other thing that we had to look at in addition to that data was basically look at our policy statements. These policy statements drive essentially what we do in water and sanitation. And the old policy statements were, drafted some time ago, and by by many of my colleagues in WASRAG. And they had to be reviewed because since then, you know, the SDGs have come out. We've really focused our shift in WASH towards sanitation and capacity building, et cetera. So these are hot off the press. They are to be approved by the trustees as of this April. And the highlights that you see here are some of the major highlight changes that have happened in our policies around water and sanitation. Now, what this document does is it drives our funding activities. So things that don't fall into our scope of purpose and goals for our policy statements does not get funded. However, as you can see here, this is actually, I think, quite broad. We do cover a substantial amount of water resource management projects, which actually a lot of areas, especially India and Brazil, are starting to focus in on. But what I think is important is that, you know, mentioning things such as menstrual hygiene management, specifically what are we talking about when we talk about hygiene education or behavior change, that is not just knowledge acquisition. We really want to see Rotarians take a more rigorous approach to these software activities. That's spelled out much more in our policy statements now. And this wasn't me who drafted this, believe it or not. I gave kind of direction, but I pulled together a Rotary community, essentially of cadre members, WASRAG members, that were representing some of our major areas for major areas of work in water and sanitation. So we had over 35 Rotarians giving their input to this, in addition to staff. So it finally has gotten to its final draft. There was a lot of scrutiny about some of these developments. One thing I do want to point out is that we actually have put in here that global grants can now fund what we call advocacy activities. And this is what I think Rotary's strength is. You always hear me talk about this, those who know me, is I really think this is where Rotary has a unique role to play in water and sanitation. And that's really to use their networks of influence to help influence change with decision makers to prioritize water and sanitation. So whether that's, you know, allocation of funding for WASH services, or helping to drive the establishment of national standards and guidelines in countries that are lacking of those, or even driving more rigorous certification process for ODF communities in country. Those are all examples of how Rotarians are already being advocates in the field. So I just wanted to find a way to formalize that more so in our policy statements so that Rotarians can obtain funding to help them do that through our global grant system. So that's one dramatic change to our policy statements. I'm gonna send this to you right after this presentation for you all to take a look at, and this kind of goes into the roles of how I would love to keep in contact with you, if not joining you in the future, of utilizing your expertise for feedback and the development of this, and getting feedback on how Rotarians are interpreting these policies. So I think it's important just to note these are out there. I would love to get feedback from you all on them, because they have one last revision that they go through after the trustees approve the general changes. So I won't go through the details. It's quite lengthy. It's about a 4 or 5 page document. Last but not least, I just wanted to highlight 2 of our major programs that Water and Sanitation has within the Rotary Foundation. And I won't go into too much detail other than to say, again, we're so lucky. I feel lucky because my other colleagues in the other areas of focus do not have these pilot opportunities. This is because of the enthusiasm of Rotarians, that they've been able to draw these partnerships together and get funding for them and advocate for funding within the foundation. So the first is the RIUSAID partnership. And this is a partnership that has taken place now. We've expanded to Uganda and to Ghana. And each of these have very, very different angles on how they're approaching their national efforts. For example, Ghana has pulled together 36 different clubs to work in Ghana around water and sanitation in healthcare centers, in schools and communities, very targeted, of course, in 13 districts across Ghana. And they have also not only decided how they would participate in the hardware and software activities alongside USAID and their implementation partners, but they've developed this formal advocacy initiative where all 36 clubs have identified their people of influence in their clubs that can really speak and work directly with district authorities. And they're working in advocacy by bringing the community and the DAs together around a scorecard tool, which is a way for accountability for both sides to be focused around the water and sanitation services. So they're right now developing the scorecard. They're bringing together the important players once a month to be able to talk about water and sanitation services. It's really, really fascinating to see Rotarians in this role and how this is, the successes and challenges with it. We've seen how Rotary has operated in polio, and now I really am interested to see how this is translating to water and sanitation. In Uganda, I just want to point out this is a really unique initiative as well. We have 13 clubs in Uganda who are working together to develop the private sector of Uganda, which is much less developed than West Africa around water and sanitation. So they're working with social entrepreneurs and trying to doing a market analysis, market assessments, and really trying to figure out the gaps and why those gaps exist within the Kampala metropolitan area. So I think the very two different foci, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how those develop. And this is what we want to encourage. We want to encourage Rotary clubs to be working together and not doing all these fragmented projects. We really want them to be trying to create a larger impact. So that kind of brings me to my last just overview of the Washington Schools Target Challenge. I know I'm speeding ahead, but I want to make sure we have discussion. The Washington Schools Target Challenge is our second program under the water and sanitation portfolio. And this is to focus on water and sanitation in schools as well as basic education and literacy initiatives. Along with UNICEF, we've developed milestones that need to be met for 1 star, 2 stars, and 3 stars, as we call them. So together, schools and Rotarians and UNICEF work together to try to achieve those milestones. And there's successes with each one. So you don't have to go for 3 stars. You can go for 1 star. And it's really to elevate Rotarians' level of work in schools. No longer do we want to encourage just the filter drops that we've typically seen in schools. But we really want them to look at the holistic environment in the school. How does not only do we improve water and sanitation conditions, but MHM, but also teacher training, getting teachers and their capacity built alongside the construction and infrastructure. So this has been piloted now. We're in our 3rd year. We're in 5 focal countries that include India, Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, and Kenya. And we'll be doing an evaluation of that program at the end of this year. And we are anticipating, it depends on the evaluation results, but we're anticipating this could be an opportunity to be rolled out to the rest of the Rotary world. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're just trying to create a focused goal for Rotarians who are interested in working in water and sanitation in schools and basic education and literacy. But also there's an opportunity to maybe get also additional funding other than our typical global grant model. So we're looking into that now, and I'll keep you updated as that progresses. So that was just a quick overview of the Rotary Foundation activities, but what really gets me more jazzed up is really to have a discussion about how can I collaborate with colleagues like such as yourself in these processes? How can I help you as well as your e-club going forward? So I just want to stop there and kind of open it up to any questions or thoughts that anyone might have.
I'm going to make one first observation, and you mentioned this, that kind of talked about possibly joining the club, but one way or the other, if we could just get together with you periodically, like quarterly, that would be a great thing, just to keep up on what's going on, and really, you know, we're going to run out of time tonight before everybody's questions are asked, but the overall question would be, as a club, we're pretty young. We have a lot of talent we've assembled, and the overarching question to you would be, how do you see an e-club that has all this expertise together working to support the foundation? What are some of the things that we could really do, not just because we are starting things on our own, and we're going to just do things because we have people who have their own interests and motivations, but if we could kind of make that work for the foundation, what would those things be?
So I think the biggest one is to create the change that I'm hoping to get within Rotary, such as, for example, community assessments. I know this is such a 101, but we recently had a policy change that community assessments are absolutely needed for our global grants going forward in order for them even to be considered for funding. And I would say before we had water and sanitation grants, the denial rate for a global grant was at maybe 2%. Now we're up to around 13–14%. Just because we're getting a lot of projects still coming in that really have not touched base with the community of any substantial degree. And they're proposing projects in a bubble. So that tells me there's a lot of education that needs to be, and messaging that needs to get out there that we're not able to do very effectively from headquarter level. And I think that doesn't come through, documents. We've produced a lot of documents, but I don't think anybody reads them, honestly. It really is going to come more so from training, webinars, any sort of events that your e-club might be interested in, and pulling together, getting the message out.
I have a couple comments, Erica. Thanks a lot for sharing this stuff. This is Neil again.
Hi, Neil.
It's great to see the Rotary policy statement here. I'm glad that I could help a little bit with that. The second thing is, it's fascinating to see. I'm sorry that your PowerPoint broke down while you were talking about Ghana and Uganda.
Oh.
The Ghana slide. We didn't see the Uganda slide.
No. Okay. Let me see if I can get it up.
We're seeing Ghana right now.
Oh.
We see exactly your screen.
There's Uganda.
I'm sorry, you know what? I'm missing my visual slide of the actual country. There's a country. So I think actually 2 of those are missing. So that would have been more helpful. My apologies.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just great. This is, you're a rock star, Erica. It's great to see this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with Bruce. I think if we could engage you early, even twice a year, to speak to would have a powerful impact.
Okay.
You know, what we're Wash here in Haiti is trying to address that community assessment portion. So it's exciting to see what else is going on.
That's great.
Just
I just want to let you know that there are, this communications just gives you a little bit more visual things, such as we have a web page. We also have globalwaters.org. I'm sure many of you are familiar with from USAID. they actually have a page dedicated for Rotary, how Rotary is working with USAID. And on there we have blogs and lessons learned, etc. So this would be definitely a good place for everybody to go if you're interested further. I'll send this to Bruce. I'll send this to you to be distributed to the club after.
Hey,
So-
Bruce,
Yeah,
would you like for me to put this into a video where we can actually put it in our private
Sure.
members only Facebook?
sure.
All right, I could put it on a YouTube, and that way we can slow it down, and people can actually or I can connect it via PDF, and that way people can hit the links.
Yes, good idea.
Yeah.
So how do we mix funds with USAID?
So, you know what? It's so interesting. We're really expanding our partnership more. Before, it was a very closed partnership. There had to be agreement exactly where we would be working and where they wanted to work. But now they've seen the successes that have come out of our 2 pilot countries, and we're looking for a 3rd pilot country now. And that really comes from the demand of the Rotarians themselves to be a part of a partnership like that. And then we've also expanded in unique ways. For example, in Eastern Europe, we now have the Bureau of Eurasia and Eastern Europe. The deputy administrator of USAID really was impressed and said, you know what, we want to put up about $2 million for any sort of water and sanitation activity that wants to happen with Rotary clubs in Eastern Europe and Eurasia. And although our Rotary clubs are not as strong in those areas, there's still potential. I definitely see, like, for example, in Georgia, Steve Warner is driving an initiative there with Washington Schools. So we're setting up a different kind of mechanism, a partnership mechanism, rather than our traditional closed mechanism that will allow that partnership to expand. So there's a lot of flexibility now, but the demand has to come from Rotarians seeking to work at a scale like that. This really has to be a much larger initiative than what we typically see through our global grants.
We actually have a club member in Ghana, and we also have, I guess, an affiliate. You probably know Moses Musitwa. He's a WASRAG ambassador. He's kind of an affiliate of our club, so we kind of have representation in both of those countries. But I don't think we've really fully grasped how the people on the ground can link in with these pretty high-level programs.
Yeah, and another way that I can see club members being involved is we have what we call a sustainability index. I'm not sure if you're well aware of it, but it'll be on our RIUSAID webpage on Rotary.org. It's called the WASH Sustainability Index. It was developed through the partnership, and what we try to do is we identify programs of what we call scale, of larger scale, not only of our partnership programs, but there's other potentials coming down the line, like, for example, hand wash, or there's a big initiative right now, like I said, in Georgia coming up. And we're keeping our eye on those, and we really want to be able to utilize this index tool to predict the likelihood of sustainability of these programs. And it gives us more data than what we have right now at the foundation of how successful is Rotary working with larger partners and in a broader sense, and at a higher scale. And what we need in order to implement that tool is trained workforce, essentially, of trained volunteers who would have that monitoring background and be able to go into the field on behalf of the foundation to utilize that tool. And it's something that we're really trying to pull together right now of how would we do that. It would be under our, for those of you who are a part of the cadre of technical advisors, that was one of the areas that we were thinking of starting off, training those individuals. But I realize now, as I've looked at the portfolio of cadre advisors, that really does not encompass the majority of our expertise in Rotary. And I don't, and maybe they didn't join cadre or whatnot. So I want to also find a way to include members, for example, from this E-Club, if you're interested, to be a part of that specialized team to be able to go out and implement these this WASH Sustainability Index tool in the field.
Yeah, if you could send that along to us, that way we could have that sort of information for our members area. That would be very helpful because I know for myself I would like to help, but we can actually put that. We have a members only Facebook area, and I can add those documents to the area.
Perfect. I will.
And Erica, I would say, not just in regard to that, but also the feedback you wanted from the policies. When you think that you want something from this club, I would say you should ask.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, because we, as part of our strategic planning, have been thinking, how can, and Bruce asked you this specifically, but how can we work better with you and with WashRag, of course, but what can we do for you? And if we have things we can do for you, you need to just let us know. I mean, in terms of this, the sustainability index and people visiting, you may have somebody in our club that can do that, and we may not, but we won't know unless you ask.
Okay.
So I would definitely, when you're working on whatever area that you happen to be working at the time, you think, boy, maybe the E-Club will give me a hand, go ahead and ask.
That's great.
Please do.
Yeah, I will.
I'm Laura. I'm one of the people who.
Can I ask?
Did I interrupt somebody?
Go ahead, Laura.
Lori, go ahead.
I actually went to school with James Robinson, who used to work for Rotary International, and I'm a friend of Shane as we were texting once. So when I got involved with Rotary, and Bruce will attest to this because I came up to him and I had to ask all about data and I know about accountability and sustainability of projects. And if we could just manage all of the well-intended fundraising in a strategic way towards an object or a goal like we did with polio, how successful we'd be in water. And it's absolutely, so I'm the CEO of O Horizons Foundation, which I understand you work with at some point with the wood mold. And we have all these wonderful, well-meaning Rotarian groups that go out, like you said, and raise money outside of the global grant and spearhead a small project somewhere, and then I get a call that it doesn't work anymore. And there's $40,000 wasted in an area where they didn't really need it. It wasn't the right solution for them, and they don't like it, and I don't blame them. It wasn't because their community wasn't well vetted. They didn't do an assessment. So I am incredibly interested that I joined this e-club because I really want to understand a way to create that scorecard and create some kind of sustainability for the funds that were raised and accountability to that. Not just creating a project because you're excited about it and dropping the mic and walking out. I want to know that it's going to continue. And Gary from the Novi Rotary did one of our first projects in Ecuador, but nothing's been tracked. I want to go back and geotag all of our filters and find out, are they still working? Do people still want them? I want to understand, like I've been trying to work with Neil, pinpoint exactly where our solution is the best and where it isn't, so nothing's in vain and nothing's wasted, and to partner globally to make sure the right solutions in the right places at the right time to create sustainable solutions overall.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited about what you're doing. Eileen asked me to be part of her Latrine speech, but my mom just passed away, so I don't know how involved I'll be, but I was very much involved with her and not Erica, you're Erica, Nikki, creating the scorecard. Nikki's part of this group too, Nikki Bisich from NSF.
Yeah.
So it all kind of comes around, and that's kind of where I fit into all this, and why I was attracted to this group was the data. I love that M-Water mapping that Neil and Brian are doing. I think it's super exciting because that's really going to narrow down our idea of what solutions are. I ran into, just going on vacation with my kids and my husband to Florida, I ran into a Rotarian group. Everyone's wearing Rotarian jackets, and they were going on a tour to go see destruction after Hurricane Maria, but they told me that they invested $30,000 in water biofilm filters that were plastic and went to an area, they couldn't remember exactly where, but a country in Africa, and they didn't have water. I went, what are you doing spending $30,000 when you didn't know they didn't have water to clean? You can do better than this. So I'm super excited. If there's anything I can do to be helpful, I would be happy to be helpful. This is my background. I've done 25 years of fundraising and I know exactly what is required of a community assessment. And now as a grantor, I push a lot of it. So I'm happy to hear you speak finally, and I'm here at your beck and call.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I do want to also point out that, you know, that I think it's worthwhile to think of almost strategically how to rev this club up to be an advisory club, because we have, like, for example, Sushil Gupta is coming up to be the president. He's the president nominee, right? And he just, you know, I was just discussing with him today of what he wants his big call out for the Rotary world to be. And he wants it to be the protection and cleaning of water sources. So that's a huge thing, but in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, this could go really well, or this could go not so well, because we could have a lot of one-off, like, you know, not quality work being done. Or it could go really well if they're prepared, if Rotarians get messaging early on to prepare them to take on this challenge he's going to call them to do. So I think I want to give this club a heads up on stuff like that. And then I think that if we could work together to think about, okay, knowing that's coming down the pipeline, something like that, could be an amazing opportunity to mobilize funding and activities and action across Rotary globally. But we really need to, we're not prepared at this point in time for any call out like that. So
I can speak to that directly. The work for is called the National Water Quality Assessment. So this goes back to 1972, the Clean Water Act, and all of the things that went in place in the Safe Drinking Water Act. In the mid-1980s, someone in Congress asked the question, is it working? And the answer was no one knew, because no one was measuring. So the Water Quality Assessment Project was established in the 1990s, and we've been going for 30 years now, and it's still hard to answer that question. Evaluating whether these efforts to protect water sources or clean them up is not going to be very simple at all.
Right.
Long-term commitment, and it needs, you know, goes back to the question of data at really large scales. And the sustainability issue is really critical. You know, I see the proposals, hey, let's go drill a well here, and I look at the global map and I see that's a place that's already severely stressed. And depletion, you know, we're talking about sinking a well where there's already severe depletion. So there's a lot of data that we could collect, though, that would really serve that longer term purpose.
Yeah.
And like Laura was mentioning, yeah, well, those people went out and put a filter in, or they drilled a well or whatever. But if they if they just recorded it and took one water level measurement or pH measurement, some point in the future we could go back and say, all right, let's see this. Okay, this is a stable water table here, or we have clean water still.
Yeah.
But if you don't measure it and capture it somewhere, one of the things that our club has been working on is trying to get an app that a Rotary user could easily, in the field, geotag a site and put a little bit of information about that site, and then upload that to a common area where we would have the data that people could then query. Not just Rotary. I think we could really make a lot of mileage with government entities by helping them. I think a lot of them would like to have a national program. They don't have the capacity. I was just at a meeting at the World Bank headquarters last week and talked to the sanitation minister from Ghana. And one of the things he said was he would like to see NGOs work within the structure that the state, the country government is trying to do. For example, if the country is really focusing on sanitation in one zone of the country, and an NGO comes in and says, well, we're going to drill wells over here, it'd be better if it wasn't just the Rotary Club and the host club talking to each other, but kind of get the government involved in there somewhere, so that we were seen as an organization that was helping not just the people in the village, but the overall understanding of the government and the functioning of the government, like what's going on in Haiti, for example.
Yeah, look, if I could expand upon that, Bruce, I mean,
Yeah.
the major issue that we all deal with, and it kind of remains unspoken, is that the real issue around WASH not working is a systems issue. That the systems that create safe managed water aren't in place, and it focus on a well or a septic tank or a water system as being the breakdown as to why people don't have water, when it's really the entire hierarchy or system that's in place that creates that breakdown or contributes to that breakdown. And so things like what they're doing in Ghana or Uganda, or even what we're doing in Haiti with hand wash, is to put all those pieces in place that help create a system where people have access to safely managed water. And you know, the tools that we've created are really just transparency tools in that framework. I don't know if that helps you guys understand, but
definitely. I mean, just this conversation alone has made me think about maybe one of the conversations I can have with Sushil to direct that kind of call out would be maybe more so the action that he'd like Rotarians to do maybe is simply the recording of where they're even working, or what water sources they're working with.
That'd
I
be a
mean,
great
maybe
first
something
step.
as simple as that would be a substantial movement for Rotary to contribute to.
yeah.
So,
When I talk about, so I'm talking about, okay, you build a water system, who's the authority that decides who manages that water system? And whether or not that management is being effective or needs to be replaced if that manager is not effective. And it's those kind of stacked hierarchical systems that contribute to these breakdowns. That's where Rotary's advocacy plays a huge role in putting those in place.
And I think Rotary can kind of balance the independence of the individual club project against the value of the pooled resource. I remember when I first started talking to Rotarians about this before I joined this club, I said, oh, well, Rotary's drilling thousands of wells all over the world. Who has the data? No one has. And I was horrified. I was horrified. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It is such a valuable piece of information.
Yeah.
All it takes is for some effort to make people realize that, yes, your project is good on its own, but it's part of a bigger project. And, you know, the information that Neil had in Haiti, I was kind of drooling over because that's what I do in my day job. And he gave it to me. Guess what comes out as the variable, not geology or population density, I did all these statistical tests for E. coli. Well, it turns out that the management of the system was the variable that controlled things more than any other. And the community-based management, I can't think that's the one that Neil used, was the top by far. And the unmanaged was, so it was, but you can't tell that unless you have data.
Yeah.
So I'm big on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that this foundation, they recognize the need for it. And these bigger programs we have definitely does have the data, but that's only a small little portion, you know, of really what the collective is doing. So, I mean, this is what I really value right now is I just thought to myself, I'm gonna go back to him and maybe speak to him a little bit more about, you know, what is giving a clear activity that he could probably, instead of having everybody go out and plant trees, for example, as we saw President Ian do. Well, that was the response we got from that was there was a lot of confusion around that because people started saying, well, what type of tree? Where should I plant the tree? You know, and that's a tree, you know. I mean, there's water and sanitation is much more complicated. So this is very helpful, this conversation. Can I also ask you, as a club, what would you like to see from me or from the Rotary Foundation? How can we help support you in the things that you guys are doing, your activities?
I'm just going to jump in really quickly. I mean, the first thing is going to be sort of a constant communication with us.
Okay.
And even though you said you're going to go back and talk about what we were just speaking about, the data collection, you know, if there's another point you need to discuss with us, you don't have to be our speaker. We don't have to, you know, take your time, a whole lot of time, but you're welcome to join any of our club meetings and say, you know, get in touch with us and say, can I have 10 minutes to talk to your membership? And the answer is yes. Our meetings are Tuesday and Thursday, you know, every week. The second thing, and I'll let somebody else talk, but just so you mentioned the phrase when you were talking about the E-Club as an advisory club, and it's come up in our, again, planning that we are a club of consultants, so either consultant or advisory. And our President Bruce has, he's the one who elucidated our mission and vision statement in one short phrase. And Bruce, I'm going to let you say it. That is, if we don't have the answer, we can find somebody who does.
That's awesome.
With all the people in this club. So I would just say, you know, use us, I guess is what I would say.
One thing I think that might be a factor in the future is publicity. If we do get some of these ideas that we talk with you about, we talk with WASREG about, and we want to get it out, well, the WASREG newsletter is one, but if you have a bigger microphone than we do, could be a time when we might ask that something we've worked on that you see as valuable, you know, we can put it on our Facebook page. We have 120, 100, maybe 200 people. Angela maybe knows how many people follow it, but it's, you know, it's a couple hundred. Whereas you could probably reach tens of thousands if it's an idea worthwhile, whether that means possibly even the Rotarian magazine or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Those resources are open to you. Now that I know how to utilize them, it's been a while, believe it or not, our communications team used to work in its own silo. But now we've definitely got them more aligned with us, and I now know how to access the social media people if needed, etc. So,
well, I work as a social media person for the club. My is Angela, and I often tag Rotary International in many of our posts and such, especially when any of our members have presented papers or anything like that could be of use to RI, and so it would be helpful if we could figure out ways to either hashtag or tag you guys, and then they post it onto or like it and allow it to go on to their social media.
Okay.
It appears as though what's going on is that they have a filtering opportunity. They just need to click on those things from us because we won't send any kind of crazy stuff.
Okay. Yeah. We also have campaign days that now, again, water and sanitation is the only one really except polio where the RI is now recognizing the campaign days. So World Water Day, World Toilet Day, you know, all the different days that are out there for WASH. And I feel like that's because that we've been consistently hammering down on them to say, you know, this is ridiculous that we aren't, you know, mobilizing Rotarians at least around these campaign days. So I could use a force of how you would like to see those days, you know, what would you want to be really communicated? Like how ideas of what do we want Rotarians to do on World Water Day to celebrate World Water Day? What is a doable action or activity that would be meaningful? Or World Toilet Day coming up in November, you know, I don't have the capacity to be, you know, pulling those ideas together in the midst of everything else, but those are really key opportunities for us to keep the momentum around water and sanitation. Mhm. Any other thoughts or feedback on anything of interest that you?
Oh, only 100 million things, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you tell me. I mean, like M Water, I can say M Water has really been brought to attention, for example, by Neil, to our, and we don't have any application like that to use to collect data at all in the foundation. But now it's seriously being looked at of how to integrate it institutionally, not just for our WASH portfolio, but like how is the foundation going to benefit from a tool like that? So, you know, that's an example of how just the contribution of a single club, a single person has really kind of informed how things are going at headquarter level.
I think that one of the kind of obvious things that we're moving into is we're essentially saying we want to sustainably help to manage the water resources of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's just such a huge undertaking. It requires all kinds of expertise, ideas, and then, you know, the grunt work to really dig into it.
Yeah.
So we do have some of that in the club. We have a lot of it in the club, and we're definitely willing to help. It's always been a kind of a work in progress, and I think the fact that we don't have everything figured out is not a problem, because we're not ever going to figure everything out. But we are moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
and constantly, you know, sitting in these meetings week after week and hearing what people are doing and seeing new ideas. And you'll see me kind of like sit up in my chair a little bit and start writing things down. And
Mm-hmm.
but of course, we are all volunteers in this, so we sometimes it takes a while for things to develop, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll definitely keep in touch. And yet I did sign up for the cadre. I've done a couple of things. We've had a couple of exchanges back and forth. I'll probably do more of that once my year as president is over.
Yeah, and I encourage the rest of you also to do cadre, simply because that's our, especially when we have global grants that are fairly large, we need visitors to go out there. Like we have a lot of watershed management projects in India right now that we need cadre for. And when we looked at our database for watershed expertise, we actually we only have a handful, which I know you guys, there's a lot of watershed management expertise within the Rotary Circle.
Cadre. How do you even sign up for it? How do you find out about it?
So why don't I go ahead and send that link also to Bruce? I mean, Bruce has gone through it now, but it's you need to reach out to Christian Pepera at Rotary.org, and he is our cadre technical advisor manager. He basically you need to send a resume. You need to go through a cadre orientation or training of some sort. And then you start out by doing a technical review of some of the proposals that come in. Once we kind of see that, you know, you're strong in that area for project design, et cetera, that you're in alignment with what our policies and standards of quality are, then we start putting you in the field for our largest projects. And that's to look at stewardship concerns, project design. It's also an opportunity for an external reviewer to give advice for some of these projects out in the field. So we're always in need, especially in Latin America. We still have a shortage there. Philippines, that area, Indonesia, Philippines, we're in a big shortage there. So yes, if you're interested, I'll send that information with the packet that I'm going to be sending to Bruce.
So Erica, one of the things the review that I did, several people reviewed a fairly complicated proposal that the three people who reviewed it all kind of mentioned, hey, you missed a major issue that you should have discussed, and we all kind of pointed out the same thing. And one of your replies was, That's great, but what I'd really like to see is if we could somehow educate people to know to ask that question to begin with, so they didn't get so far into the grant and find out that they had missed something. And I don't really know how to do that, because a lot of people are making grants in areas that are outside of their expertise. But to try to, get out, here's basic things you should know before you do a water project. I know that's on the WASRAG site, and I'm pretty sure that people read down into the details, they would have seen some of that. But to a person who's a hydrologist, it's like this light bulb comes on, boy, they missed the boat. And if there's something we could do to teach before people intervene early in the process, if people need expertise, that would be, it would help get people out of that rut where they get too far down the road and they get frustrated, and then I don't know whether they go through with it or not. But
may I offer a suggestion? I think that one of the things that would be helpful too is the way in which you could use us is that regionally we could be a speaker at a club for Rotary clubs around in our regions and offer advice to clubs in our region. So you could say to the Rotary International could say, one time a year, if your club is interested in doing a water project, here is a list of speakers who are in this specific club who have this specific knowledge, can actually do these things.
Of course, when we had Ron Denham speak to us a few weeks ago, he said exactly that same thing, only he put it in the context that we should be WASRAG ambassadors, so that in our geographic area, that if anybody got in touch with WASRAG, they'd say, well, there's an ambassador in your area, come to your club. So, I mean, that covers that in a different way.
I totally agree, Bob. And what we could do is we could put stuff on the Facebook page and social media to help them further.
Do you guys have I guess a geographic map of some sort to show where all the members of the E-Club are?
We're everywhere. I don't know. Bruce, do we have a...
Well, we could put one together.
We could put one together. We don't have one. Sorry, Eric.
Put one on M-Water.
All the mapping experts in this room.
We need M-Water.
I can do one on Google Maps. I'll have it by next.
Yeah, but something like that would be helpful, because honestly, I don't even answer my phone right now because of so many calls coming in of, Rotarians with the littlest projects from big, hey, we're going to start this $1 million initiative in Peru. Like just today, that one came in. And there's no way that I can offer, I can't be an advisor for all that. That's impossible. So I would love to be able to say, hey, who has expertise in the Peru area, or is there someone actually based in Lima that we could reach out to from this club that we can put you in contact with from the front end, like you said, Bruce, because by the time the proposal comes to us, there's too much hard soul, sweat, blood, and tears in that it's really difficult to change.
Right. And the other thing that we could do is internally even a list of what our members do professionally.
Yes.
So you could then look at, hey, I need a person who has this, and look at the matrix and say, are you busy?
Yeah.
And they'll say yes, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, so we do on our evenings.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's another thing is just encouraging clubs even that you talk to, and I talked about this, I think, this week with Neil and Nancy, is just, a lot of Rotary clubs don't even know what they have in their club in terms of vocational expertise. So being able to map what your club has in terms of vocational expertise, and that doesn't necessarily mean that in water and sanitation, for example, in Kampala, we're not utilizing water and sanitation expertise necessarily so much from our Rotarians. We're mobilizing our entrepreneurs, our finance experts, etc., and they're working in conjunction with USAID and some of the NGOs we're working with there, because they have that expertise to help develop the private sector. So I mean that's just I think we want Rotarians to start thinking about, okay, I'm not in water and sanitation, but I really like it. You know, I'm a finance guy. What can I do? You know, I think first being aware of what we have in our house is really the first step. And then we can talk about even more, how can we utilize and leverage that? So
That's a great point, because really, for the most part, water projects are a multi-headed hydra as far as needs and talents. Everything, you know, Bob with medical, doing efficacy studies, medical efficacy studies and stuff like that, for an idea of, you know, developing business models, doing sustainability studies in terms of understanding what logistically where things are, who you network with in country. I mean, if there are NGOs in country that have similar projects, and you're looking at economy of scale. So, I mean, it's more than just the technology. It's really a lot of the factors that really weigh into a project. Also, community participation. You know, somebody actually starts to work with the community to get them involved, since ultimately they inherit the project.
Yeah.
Erica, I think you see how passionate we get about all of our little areas, just like you do. I'm gonna, in a minute, I hate to do this, and I'm not the one to call this off, Bruce is, but I'm gonna stop the recording because we're gonna play this again next week, unless you can join us in person. If you can join us in person, that would be good again. But I'm just waiting here to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll have it for next week. So it's up to you.
I think Neil kind of summed it up, and he said we could go on. He had probably a million more things we could talk about. Rather than overstay our time with Erica, we appreciate what you've contributed, and really, I think this has been really effective. And I think, Angela, you were
Yes.
today.
Yes, I'm the person who's going to close us out today. Erica, thanks so much for having us and giving us all of this information. I know that as professionals in the WASH area, we all need this kind of information because we're trying to change the world in water, sanitation, and hygiene. So thanks so much for giving us your time and the time that you gave us tonight, and all of the resources that you will send along. We are especially grateful for your time and spending time with us tonight. Thank you so much, and we appreciate everything you've done and everything you do for Rotary.
Oh, well, thank you, Angela. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everyone that attended tonight. It was such a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're only 20 minutes over, as if anybody is counting. So I appreciate your attendance, and we will